Hey folks, for today, a little change of pace from what I usually do. Instead of a horoscopic analysis, I'd like to do a book review. And this will be the first in a series of reviews that I'll continue well on into 2024, mostly on books on Jyotish, but also on Hasta, and we'll see whatever else I might get to in due course. Anyway, so today's book is Light on Life by Hart and Robert Svoboda. Now, fair disclosure, Hart has been my Jyotish teacher for 20 plus years, so naturally I have an allegiance to his work, but as you'll see in due course, I will do lots of other reviews for people with whom I have no personal association whatsoever. So this book, this copy here is a sort of a more recent edition. I guess was published maybe 7 to 10 years ago. I used to have a much older copy that dated back some 20 years. But to be honest, I read it so many times, 3 or 4 or 5 times, that it actually began to fall apart on me. So I had to discard that version and buy a newer version. So away we go. Now, this book, first thing I want to say, it is not what we'd call a cookbook astrology style book. What do I mean by that, cookbook style? Other authors have done these, and that's where you get a rundown of what it means to have each planet in each sign, each planet in each house of the horoscope, various other combinations that may occur in the course of the horoscope. This doesn't have that, not those specifics. So you're not going to be able to use it to, as a reference, let's say, to piecemeal assemble a horoscopic analysis. What it does offer, however, is a superlative overview of the subject of Jyotish. And, if we just look through the table of contents, we'll see what's involved here. It starts off with chapter 1, the origins of Jyotish. So Jyotish is one of the Vedangas, or one of the limbs of the Vedas. And there are various forms of Jyotish, whether it's Jataka, birth horoscope, or Prashna, question and answer horoscope, or Muhurta, for planned activities, and Nimitta for other applications. And there's different styles of Jyotish, or schools of Jyotish. This book is mostly about, almost exclusively, Parashari Jyotish. But, in this first chapter, he also discusses, the existence of Jaimini, of Tantric, and of the Tajika branches of Jyotish. But as I say, most of this is drawn from Brihat Parashara Shastra or other related works. Chapter 2, Philosophy of Jyotish. This is where we get into a bit of the notions of karma, the philosophy of Sankhya, remedies in the form of upayas or yagyas, and so on and so forth. Chapter 3 is on essential astronomy for Jyotish. So what is the zodiac? What is the ayanamsha? That is the precession of the equinoxes, which is applied in Western tropical astrology, but not in typically in Jyotish. How a horoscope is mapped, how the houses are derived. Chapter 4, the grahas. So basically, the aspects or the drishti that are cast by each of the planets. Their strengths and weaknesses, typically via either zodiacal placement by sign or by some measure of brightness, combustion versus retrogression, and some other factors. The karakatva of the grahas, so each of the planets, grahas properly, are associated with various ages of man, with animals, with minerals, with bodily parts and substances, metals and gems, and so on and so forth. Chapter 5, a discussion of the rashis, so the 12 signs of the zodiac, their various characteristics, the many categories in which we can place them, how the constellations can be divided subdivided into, let's call them mini constellations. So the principle of the Navamsha, dividing each sign into 9 subdivisions and thereby deriving, the fabled Navamsha, the 9th harmonica, which is, a correlate to every serious Jyotishi's analysis. Chapter 6, the bhavas. This is where we, categorize houses according to they be kendras, angular houses, triconas, triangle houses, the dishtanas, upachayas, so on and so forth, and the meanings of each of the houses. Now, this is where we get into quite a bit of rich detail. Many people who are students of Jyotish or even long-time practitioners of Jyotish are familiar with the sort of low-hanging fruit of house meanings and associations. And they know that the second house, for instance, is indicative of portable wealth or vision or speech or diet and so on and so forth. And so each of the houses has these basic meanings, which most people are aware of, but there are also secondary meanings, and there are esoteric meanings as well too for each of the houses. So some of this, provides a wealth of detail that many Jyotishis, barely scratch the surface on when it comes to their interpretations. But this is excellent as a reference tool to understand that the houses mean so much more than most of us are typically aware of. This chapter also discusses the purusharthas, the basic goals of life, artha, security, kama, pursuit of pleasure, dharma, right action, moral behavior, and finally moksha, or ultimate release or liberation from the travails of life. Chapter 7 discusses the panchanga. So basically, this is a discussion of tithis, karanas, the yogas that are used in the panchanga, and again, an excellent reference. Chapter 8, the nakshatras. So the origin of those, and then the individual nakshatras, their meanings, their associations, their the lords, the deities which rule those nakshatras, and sort of a preview of how some of this can be used. The placement of grahas within nakshatras and how that can be used to determine basic personality characteristics, but also, profession, for instance. Chapter 9, okay, so this is where we're really getting to the meat and potatoes aspect of this book. So chapter 9 is interpretation of the horoscope. So there's some preliminary considerations, looking at the grahas, the bhavas, and their interrelationship with each other. And some basic principles of interpretation, which I won't go try to list here, but there are 18 basic principles of interpretation taken from classical Shastra, that whether that be Parashara or Paladipaka or Uttarakalamrita. Incidentally, I must remark that Hart's knowledge of Shastra is beyond compare. Should you ask him a question about anything, it's like, well, settle down and be prepared to be subjected to quite a lecture, because I literally have to call him a walking encyclopedia of information. This has come by no small effort. He spent 15 years one-on-one with his guru, Mantraji, and in the course of that had to memorize shlokas from all the classic texts, learning Sanskrit in the process, of course, and dwelling on this stuff night and day for a very, very long duration. His knowledge of Shastra is incredible. And this book is really just a distillation of, the basics of his knowledge and what he has to share. So this book, such an excellent reference. And, I hold it up as an example for, often we encounter stuff in other books and I'm not going to be pejorative or discriminatory against, many fine works that modern authors have done, but it's really quite a mixed bag as well too. And some have embarked upon their own interpretation of Shastra, which, I must say would appear to fall wide of the mark. This is a touchstone of reality and connection to source, which we should not forget. And so sometimes when I encounter sort of what we would consider to be differing opinion or various interpretations, I will look at this book, Light on Life, and just check and see, well, is this the same thing that I see here? Does Hart endorse that particular point of view? Is this what he puts forward? So chapter 9 is invaluable in terms of learning how to interpret a horoscope, the process that one should go through. Chapter 10 is one which I refer myself to a lot, and of course my students as well. This is the chapter on graha yogas. So where all those principal yogas are described, delineated to some degree, the Pancha Mahapurusha yogs, the Dharma Karma Adipati yogs, the Dana yogs, and then, the list goes on, things like Lakshmi yoga, Parivartana yoga, Viparita yoga, and many others, all of which are, described in sufficient detail here to understand how the yoga is formed and what its proper application might be. Also, the so-called 24 bhava yogas, which is when you have superlative placement for the lord of a house, occupants of the house, and the karaka for that house are all in, excellent state, which will create one of the 12 positive bhava yogas. Or conversely, if a house lord and occupants of the house and the karaka for that house are all in a miserable state, you'll get one of the so-called 12 negative bhava yogas. So the delineations for those are there as well too. And there's other stuff here, Kujadosha, Kalasarpa, etc., etc. Chapter 11, Dashas and Gochara. So, a description of the Vimshottari Dasha system. There are other Dasha systems, many others, of course. And for different practitioners of different schools, there are many other dashas to analyze. But again, the primary thrust in this book is an adherence to Parashari Jyotish. Hence, Vimshottari is the primary dasha system used in this book. And so that's key feature. Then Gochara, the transits of the outer planets, Jupiter and Saturn, and also the nodes, and some other concepts that are discussed here, Sadasati, and so on. Finally, chapter 12, a number of example chart delineations in quite a fair degree of detail. So, typically famous personages that, we all know by reputation at least. Paramahamsa Yogananda, Marilyn Monroe, Adolf Hitler, Indira Gandhi, Albert Einstein, Ramakrishna Paramahansa, and Anais Nin. So these chart delineations effectively show on paper the thought process of the consummate Jyotishi and how a chart is analyzed. So basically it's taking the principles of chapter 9 on how to interpret a horoscope and applying it in these sample delineations, through a process of what we would call graha vichara, analysis of the state of the planets, bhava vichara, an analysis of the state of the bhavas in the horoscope, yoga vichara, an analysis of yogas that exist, and importantly, their strength and placement in the horoscope. And then, of course, dasha vichara. This does not include amsha vichara, which is, a whole study and analysis of the various amshas. There's passing reference to the Navamsha, of course, because it is the queen of amshas. But for the most part, this deals with the Rashi, the birth horoscope. But this is an excellent reference book for those who don't have it. I highly recommend that you acquire it. For all of my tutorial students, I insist that they acquire a copy of this book and have it on hand for ready reference, because it is, in effect, a Bible of Jyotish written by a modern Western master of the subject. Get a copy for yourself today. Buy a copy for a friend who is interested in Jyotish. It will serve you well, and like me, you may end up reading it several times in the course of your studies. Okay, that's it for today. Come back for more book reviews in 2024. Happy New Year. Bye for now.